Hey guys, and welcome to episode 154 of the OCDstories.com podcast. Now, in this episode, I got Catherine Benfield back on. She did a previous episode where she talked about her OCD story. She talked about postpartum OCD and her good work in advocacy. Now, I wanted to get her back on because, as always, I enjoy talking with Catherine, but I wanted to get an update on her story. And also, she's been doing a lot of stigma busting work at the minute. She shared her story, which got published on the BBC News website, which would have reached millions of people, not only in the UK but globally. So that was huge. She also got an article in the British Journal of Midwifery, where she talked about her experience dealing with midwives and having OCD. So I just wanted to get her on to break that down. A, what was that like, having your story exposed to so many people? But B, why write those? Why share it? And then we talk about, what she's learned from this, tips for owning your story, owning it safely and own it with power, getting the most impact from it too. She's also been advocating, especially in the UK, to get products removed from high street stores that kind of make light of OCD. So she encouraged TK Maxx along with others to remove all their OCD products, and TK Maxx did it without any issue. So good work TK Maxx on that. And then we talk about a couple others as well. And then we talk about a bit of advice for parents of people with OCD or parents who have OCD too. And then just the general questions, but this is a wonderful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think you will too. She's an awesome person. So without further ado, here is Catherine.
On the podcast today, I have Catherine Benfield. Catherine runs the blog Taming Olivia, where she blogs about her experiences of OCD, focusing on perinatal and postnatal OCD, as well as advocates hard for the destigmatisation of OCD. Welcome back to the show, Catherine, I should say.
Hello, Stu. Thanks very much for having me again.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. Your episode was a popular one before.
Yay.
So it's nice to have you on to kind of further that discussion. For those that haven't listened to the first one we did, was a lot about your story and postnatal OCD, or postpartum OCD. And it's really good, and I 100% encourage anyone to listen to that, whether you're affected by that form of OCD. Remember, it's all OCD. So I guess for those that haven't listened to that, a taster and I guess an advert to go back and listen to that. What's your story in 30 seconds?
Oh, no pressure. Yeah. I've just spent 5 seconds saying that. So basically, I have had OCD since childhood. It took quite a difficult turn after having my son, where I started experiencing a lot of intrusive thoughts, harm-based intrusive thoughts and urges aimed towards him. I kind of hit the typical, lack of knowledge from medical staff, and it was a very, very difficult time. I eventually kind of found out myself that I actually had postnatal OCD. And as soon as I started to get better, I just started my blog, started trying to spread a bit of awareness, really. But yeah, as you say, it's all on that previous podcast. I did go into quite a lot of detail on that.
Yeah, no, it was really good. It's compelling and inspiring, so go check that out. So, people who are familiar with you are aware that you draw OCD as this character called Olivia.
Yeah.
And you do obviously talk about Olivia a lot in our previous podcast.
Yeah.
Have you been doing anything with Olivia since that time?
Olivia is, I think, like I did say in that last one, that, it's not a concept that I need to use all the time, because, these concepts are very helpful when you need them. And then at some point, actually, you become so practiced in using them, and that kind of soothing self-talk and, all the things, the empathy, the caring, the compassion, all those things that Olivia, the whole concept, brought in. You actually get quite good at doing that naturally without needing the Olivia or the original concept. It becomes who you are to be able to question these thoughts and stuff. So she is not as present in my life as she was before, but there are times that actually the things that I learned are really helpful, and they don't actually have to be through OCD. So, we'll talk about it later, but, there's been quite a lot of press exposure and quite a lot of uncertainty in terms of like reactions and things like that. They've been positive, it's not a bad thing. But you know, putting yourself out there involves quite a lot of almost risk and facing uncertainty. And using Olivia has actually really helped me with that, you know, because I kind of can identify things as anxiety or negative thought processes around them. And I can actually go, yeah, meh, I don't need to pay attention to that. And, you know, so that actually really, really has helped me. So sometimes the imagery and the visualization of Olivia's there, sometimes she's not. But the concept that she taught me, all the things that she taught me, still come into play daily, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good to hear. And as your, not necessarily your story, but as you evolve in your advocacy and stuff, things are naturally going to change and you'll use things less. And and I mean, it's working for you at the minute. So.
Oh, yeah. It really is. It's lovely. And do you know what? That's where everything started for me. And it was such a helpful concept. You know, I wasn't the sort of person to start ranting and raving about this concept if it hadn't been massively helpful for me. You know, it was something that was just life-changing, absolutely life-changing. And it still does come into play now. You know, it was magnificent for me. It really was. And I still love it. I still work with Pete on it. You know, that was always one of the big pluses of doing it because he does the artwork behind it. And it's just a really nice, positive thing to come from something that was pretty horrible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Pete, for those who don't know, is your husband.
Yes, yeah.
And he got a nice plug in what I'm about to mention.
Didn't he just?
Yeah, one of the best places you can get a link to your website is on the BBC.
I know.
So I'm sure his traffic went up massively.
Website, he's not even having a chance to work on his own website because anytime he's not working full time, he's kind of working with me on mine, bless him. So he's not actually getting a chance to build up his repertoire at the moment because he's so busy with OCD advocacy. That's love, innit, though? That's love.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, you know, we just mentioned the BBC article, so I'm sure, I mean, the BBC, I believe, is probably at least the top 5 most visited news sites globally, definitely probably number 1 in the UK, and your story that you published on that or got published on that was on the homepage of BBC News.
It was.
So instantly millions of people would have seen that on the few days. I don't know how long it was up for.
It was actually up there for over a week.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was up there. At some point it pushed down far enough for the actual image to go, but it was still there at least 10 days later.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they must rank it on popularity, so it must have been reading a lot,
I hope so.
So that is incredible exposure, both, I mean that in two senses, exposure in terms of reaching people, and exposure in terms of anxiety.
Yeah.
Because your face and the drawing of Olivia was there, and it was called I Call My OCD Olivia, is that correct?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be good to kind of, I guess, just share your experiences of having that there, you know, where millions of people could see it. And also, just what it's about for those that haven't read it.
Okay, so I was contacted by a journalist for the BBC. I was quite gutted, actually, because I turned down the chance to go on this BBC Essex radio show because I wasn't keen on the kind of tone that the journalist took me in an email. And I thought, they might not trick my story very well. And I turned it down. And that morning, the original, the show was on, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely nailed. And I was like, I should have done it. And then almost straight away, I was like, it was Dan Furlong, Jack Pridmore, Olivia Bamber was there from OCD Action, and they absolutely nailed this interview. It was one of the best I've ever heard. They talked about intrusive thoughts. You know, the journalist was absolutely brilliant. The producers on the show are fab. And I was just like, I should have done it, you know. It was just awesome. I was so pleased for them, but I was like, maybe I shouldn't be so careful next time, you know. And then I heard, literally 2 hours after that, this woman kind of saying, you know, I write for BBC Stories. I've gone the whole way through your blog a few times. I absolutely love the concept. And she was like, could I please cover your story? And at first, I didn't realise it was BBC News. I thought BBC Stories was just some kind of, I don't know, side thing that they did. I didn't realise I'd actually be up on the homepage at first. And it wouldn't have changed my decision. I would have just probably, you know, catch myself a little more. And she, I spoke to her. The first thing I did, and we're going to go on, aren't we, to talk about, like, you know, when you decide to talk to the press and stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the first things I did was talk to her on the phone, and I just loved her from the start. She'd read the blog. She was desperate to get this out there for the sake of women, you know, not for her and men as well. And, you know, it was just like, she really wanted this story to be told. And so we kind of worked through some things. Again, I'll talk about them when we get to the press bits, but we did quite a lot of work behind the scenes, quite a lot of talking about what I wanted included, etc., etc. And like this article came out and it was just unbelievable. So it talked about my childhood. What they wanted to do for the first time ever was whenever someone contacted me about Taming Olivia, I would actually say, look, can we really cover a lot of perinatal OCD and intrusive thoughts and harm-based intrusive thoughts and urges, because that's not covered enough. So it was like the concept of Taming Olivia would kind of pull the press in, but then I'd be like, look, can we just talk about this as well, please, because it's really important. And but this was the first time they actually said, we really want to focus on Olivia and you, and yeah, we'll put these other bits in as well, we know they're important, but we really like that. So I was kind of trying to, I think that's one part of kind of OCD left for me, is that sometimes I can really feel like I'm worried that I'm almost trying to hog the limelight. I don't want to be this person showing off on the news and stuff like that, so there was this real kind of, it wasn't easy for me to kind of go, do you know what, actually we will make my work and my blog the focus of this, because I did try really hard to kind of say, look, can we just talk about the other stuff? And I thought, do you know what, let's just go for it. You've got to take a chance. I write about it on my blog all the time about giving new things a go, and I thought, okay, let's do it. This is going to be make or break. It's BBC. And then it turns out that it was BBC News. And we went through about a week of maybe it's going to come out in the morning, maybe it's going to come out in the morning. And I think the whole concept was just so utterly terrifying and exciting that by the time it came out, I just was like, oh, thank goodness for that. It's out now, and I was just so excited. And that's not me. Normal me will be like, oh, imagine if this happened, or that happened, or and remembering all these people from my past who might see it and judge me. And I just didn't care. And I still feel like that weeks later. I did not care. I was like, this story needs to be told. It needs to get out there. Yeah, it's brilliant they've covered Olivia again, but look at this article that's talking about all of these things that don't normally see the light of day. It's on BBC News. And it was just absolutely unbelievable. Within minutes. Oh, the funniest thing was my sister is travelling the world at the moment. And I got this message from her on WhatsApp at 3 o'clock in the morning from Argentina going, why is it that I've just gone to check BBC News and your face is in my face on the screen? It's like I've travelled to the other side of the world to get away from you and you're here. And, we had this brilliant conversation. And it was just like absolute delirium. I was so excited. And then as soon as people started seeing it, the emails came in, every one of my social media accounts just, it was one thing after the other, these messages coming through. And the feedback from it has been absolutely incredible. I didn't think for a second it would do what it did. I didn't, in my wildest dreams, I didn't think it would go as far as it did. It was spread round. If I Google the title of that email, because I knew that BBC Stories were very careful with their comments, because that was one of my things. I didn't want people writing stupid stuff underneath it, like really ignorant things. And I still, again, would have brought out the article, because that's where my priorities lie, getting that information out there. But it didn't dawn on me that actually, you get all these other news sites around the world that just kind of pinch each other's stories, and they have comment sections open and stuff like that. And actually, I could just see these conversations happening between people that were just amazing. You could see people kind of going, oh, I didn't realise that was OCD. And, oh, I've had issues with things like that for a while. Oh, God, that sounds just like my cousin, And it just, the conversations, the messages came in and they just didn't stop. And they were all amazing. I didn't get a single message from anyone saying anything negative. There wasn't anything negative about me or my story, or you'd expect at least one person to pick up like that and just be like, you what they want to lock you up. And I was prepared for it, and there wasn't one. And it went worldwide. It was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And people since then, I think if I look at my life, all the sections in it, my childhood, my teenage years, my time as a teacher, my time as a parent, people came up to me from every single element of that life and were either really supportive, saying, you know, we had absolutely no idea, my God, how did you manage? Or they were like, do you know what? I've had a diagnosis for 15 years. I am quite literally, and this isn't just me, it hasn't worked out that it's just so happens to be me who also wrote this article. We all are absolutely surrounded by people with exactly the same symptoms as us, by people who find their intrusive thoughts upsetting, by people who wonder, you know, these weird, suddenly impulsive urges mean something more than they do. They're everywhere, Stu. Or we are everywhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. I always think if you ever feel alone in it, just walk down a busy high street or in a shopping centre, shopping mall, and literally every sort of 100 people you walk past, just look at 2 people in those 100 and go, they have it, and then do it again. And, you know, and within an hour, you, especially in a place that busy, you've acknowledged 20 other people that are going through exactly the same thing as you.
Absolutely. And you know what? And I will question the percentage when I read things from like people who've done studies and stuff, because, you know, like you said with your Russ Harris thing, it's like not everyone's going to admit to stuff like this. You know, out of the people that I know, you know, I'm kind of looking at percentages and I'm thinking, I don't know if it is 1 to 2%. I'm sure it's more, you know, and so it's not everyone's going to be open. You know, it's almost impossible to get really honest feedback on stuff like this because naturally it's quite terrifying to talk about. So we are they're just everywhere. I just couldn't believe it, Stu. I was like, people that I'd known for years kind of saying, oh, you know, I know we lost contact, but I just wanted to let you know that actually you've just described me and I had it 25 years ago. And you just sit there thinking, oh my goodness, yet no one knows because no one really talks about it, you know, and I'm in such a privileged position because I kind of was lucky enough to get this journalist's attention and she did this really good job on the article. I'm now like in this amazing position where I've heard from people and I know how often it happens, you know, and how not alone we all are. You know, I kind of wish I could give that feeling to everyone.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's really good to hear that so many people reached out and and you know, and you kind of sharing your story so bravely on the BBC, which is something I don't think I would do personally, just being 100% real, only because I don't know, I just don't. And it's, you know, it's not even about OCD, it's about just me as a person. I hate the limelight, hence why, you know, this is mainly a podcast, but I do publish it on YouTube and I don't show my face. So, you know, that's just who I am. I like my kind of privacy. And obviously you still very much got your privacy because it was only a few pictures. But to me, that's kind of where my mind goes. So I kind of salute you for that bravery. And, you know, and because of people like you doing that, you know, there's more and more people will eventually, you know, even if it is just 2% in the future, we'll know that 2%.
Yes.
So it won't be someone who has spent 20 years of their life not meeting anyone with OCD. They would have met 20 people with OCD, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? We've all got our strengths. I can't imagine doing a podcast like you do and having the confidence to talk to all these kind of world leaders in OCD. That I would not be able to do that, you know, and we are currently not even looking at each other, are we? Because I can concentrate better when I can't see people, so we're just doing a voice video, you know. It's like I still have rules where I feel more comfortable doing certain things, and I would never, if you had told me that I was going to be on BBC News, I would have taken myself outside and had a really good strong word with myself, because it's just not who I am or who I was as a person. But to me, it just made sense for that. It was like, unless I was prepared to stand in the limelight, that story wouldn't have got told. Yeah. And so, I mean, I am massively in control of every single thing I do to do with the press. You know, there's no free rein for them over me at all. But it was something that I had to decide whether I was willing to do or not. And the answer was yeah, you know, and not everyone does that. Other people's strengths lie in different places. Just because you can share your story doesn't mean that you have to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely. People have different strengths, and that will probably come into a later question on how to share your story, because different mediums suit different people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So, thanks for sharing that, and congratulations on all the success it had. No, no worries. Next one is you wrote an article which I had the privilege to read, which was in the British Journal of Midwifery, and that is a word you've confirmed. Or midwifery is how
I may
it's
have
written.
wrongly confirmed it. Never
Yeah.
mind.
That's why I'm saying it two ways in case I'm wrong.
It was the BJM.
Okay. So in that journal, which is obviously it's not necessarily a medical journal, but it's just for midwives in the UK. And you wrote about kind of your story, obviously targeting that audience. But why was it important to write an article addressing midwives?
Oh my goodness. Midwives obviously are at the very front. I suppose in teaching we call it the chalk face. They're the people who are in contact with mothers. And it was for health visitors as well, because I know it's different being a health visitor, but they're very much in contact with women and families during the perinatal period. And from my own experience, like when I had William, and also hearing from lots of other women as I do, I just couldn't believe the kind of lack of knowledge about OCD. There just wasn't any. And people tell you, the sentences that they hear from their midwives and stuff like that. You just think, oh my goodness, blimey, let's get this information out there. And they needed to know there's a lot of knowledge there about people who will obsessively clean or people who will obsessively watch their child, because that's the kind of stuff that you can kind of reason. But if you've got a mother going, actually, I've had this really horrible thought that's upset me, that might hurt them, you don't want knee-jerk reactions. You want people to be able to turn around and say, oh, I read an article about that by this woman in a magazine. Or in a journal. I'm gonna have a little look at that and maybe get other people involved and stuff like that. And so it was really important. And this is where, like, I'm not big on outside forces controlling things and destiny and stuff like that. I very much believe you make your own. But there's just been something about this journey that is quite amazing, because I actually had the British Journal of Midwifery down as people that I was going to contact to see if I could share a story for about 18 months. And I was at my son's a party. We were all sitting in the wood while we had this weird, very lovely, but kind of a strange setting for parents sitting on this log while they were having this camping party. And it was a mum that I'd not really spoken to before. And I was telling her, it's like, what do you do? And I went for a phase of I'm just going, write a bit about mental health. And I was just like, well, I had this experience and this happened and that happened. And she was like, do you know what? I'm an editor for the British Journal of Midwifery. We'd love to tell your story. And I was like, you what? You what? Are you serious? I just couldn't believe it. So almost immediately we had an issue that it could go in. I had a spec to write. I spent the biggest part of 2 months cacking myself and believing that I couldn't do it. I mean, I spoke to you during that time, didn't I, as well? I spoke to quite a lot of people, but it was...
Reassurance.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm joking, it wasn't.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that at the time. Poor old Pete, what he went through in those couple of months. But William was on summer holidays as well, so I was just finding that as soon as I was sitting down to do a good chunk of it, I was kind of being interrupted, so it wasn't the best time to do it. But it was, there were elements of it that was scientific piece. It was using a lot of the research that's been done by Fiona Chalica and Paul Salkowskis on the maternal OCD website. Who's the one who does the intrusive thoughts? Is it Abramovich? Is there?
What do you mean, website?
No, the study where it's like 95% of people.
I think it was John Abramovich, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, yeah. So there were all these different studies, and they all went in, and I had to make sure it was good fun to write. Actually, when I got going, I just spent a long time not kind of starting it. But that again is self-belief coming in. I'm not naturally. I never imagined myself ever being able to do something like that. So it was like, that is amazing. I'd love to write that article. Came home, massive crash in confidence, But I fought that, and I worked with maternal OCD on it as well. So, I knew that it would reach people and that it would be really important to reach people. But I also knew that I had this massive responsibility to get it right. And I'm an expert in my own story. I'm not an expert in the condition. I've got lived experience, but I'm not in a position to advise midwives. So I wrote the piece and got the wonderful ladies at Maternal OCD to kind of thoroughly check it. They went through, they edited it, because it's not just facts. You have to look at nuances and little intonations in the language. And, there was a Cosmopolitan article that made a couple of mistakes that were really awful. And, you know, the pressure was really on to make sure that didn't happen again, because it was already it was a community that already had a couple of knocks by that point. So, you know, it came out and it really, really did the job. And it's such an important piece. And you could see, again, midwives talking about it online. And it focused mainly on the idea of, you know, the intrusive thoughts. And I did it imagining that I was there, you know, when I was there in that position and that midwife was saying to me, you know, when they were talking about social services and child protection and all that, and when they were kind of going, oh, yeah, it's really obviously, you know, you use postnatal depression. You know, at some point they needed to kind of say, but why is this woman depressed? And, you know, make me feel comfortable enough to kind of turn around and say, actually, it's because every waking minute of my life is spent imagining me harming my son, you know. So it's about the importance of actually getting to the bottom of what that depression is, you know, why you're depressed. It's not always just because you've had a baby and your hormones or you're not sleeping, you know, sometimes there's other things. So that was amazing. And the fact that it went into that journal brought a lot of kind of credit to it. You know, my GP contacted me and was like, blimey, well done. So, you know, there's all this kind of stuff going on. I was like, I forgot they might read it. Thank God I didn't moan too much about, you know, kind of fact I didn't pick it up straight away. But, you know, it's absolutely amazing. And the fact that came out about 2 days before the BBC article meant that I then had them to weigh against each other. So if people contacted me about the BBC article, I could go, actually, there's a slightly more formal document here. And I know I've heard from women who are saying that they took that magazine article because what the BJM, they made it free. It got such a brilliant response that they made the article free to access. So originally you would have had to pay £23 for a year membership to get hold of the journal. And they made it totally free to whoever might need it. So all these women were kind of taking these documents to their doctors or to their family members who they couldn't quite bring themselves to actually utter the words to, and kind of pointing to it and saying, look, this is me, you know. And I've had messages from women saying that their perinatal mental health teams have actually kind of sent them my way as a result of reading articles like that, or they're being sent through to CBT, you know, as a direct result of that article coming out. And that is incredible. And that's full credit to maternal OCD as well, because those ladies work so hard, yet they still had time for these edits, you know, for me to do that. It's amazing.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, it's a great example of, like, in terms of advocacy, like finding an area that you felt sort of hard done by, or the best job wasn't done to help you, or and then focusing your efforts in that area. Because sometimes, you know, it can feel like sort of, what's the term? Shouting into a dark cave, like no one's going to hear, so to speak. I don't know if that's the right expression. Whereas here, what you've done is you've picked a smaller cavern within that dark cave and you shouted down that.
And I've just yelled constantly down it. And it's also, you know, as advocates, and I think this, you know, sometimes I think it's quite odd, but sometimes there can almost be a sense of competitiveness between charities and stuff like that. You know, I get why and stuff, but you know, there are some people out there doing some really amazing things. And I think, well, if they're doing that, what's the point of me coming along and repeating that? You know, I should surely just kind of try and promote that as much as I can, and then work on my little area here, you know, and then between us, we can all kind of like get all this awareness out. There's no point me coming out and doing what you do, Stu. There's no point me bringing out a podcast or writing a book. You know, it was like, that's my little area, and I'm going to bang on about that until someone listens, you know, and that's how it works so well. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I'm glad it had such a positive and strong response. Okay, so where's my next question gone? So tips for owning your story. So, you know, we discussed some of it already, but, you know, if someone wants to share a bit of their story, or they don't even necessarily want to share their story, but they want to spread the awareness of OCD. And yeah, I'll leave it with that. But what tips do you have for that?
There are loads. I suppose you need to kind of decide who it is you want to share your story with, you know, because I started off just with my little blog, and then, you know, gradually started writing maybe a couple of bits for a couple of mum bloggers. Or I think actually one of the first things I did was share my stories with the charities. And so, you know, you can assume that the people reading that are, you know, they're sympathetic for people with OCD. They understand the condition. You know, you're not going to get many people kind of turning around and questioning you because they understand. And that's really positive awareness, just sharing your story with less of a risk of people kind of saying, I'm not sure I understand that. I mean, you can choose to do things anonymously. A lot of women do things anonymously. You don't even have to share your own story. You just share other people's, obviously with permission. But a lot of people on Twitter share stuff. They very rarely tell you anything about their own, but then they, kind of highlight things that are important in other people's stories. You can support the charities again, so you don't even have to tell your own story. That doesn't have to be the way you spread awareness. Do you want to talk about the press in this one, or was that a separate one?
No, yeah, go for it if you want to include it in.
Yeah, well, no, it's just like you kind of have to ask yourself whenever you go to write something down, kind of what do you want to achieve, what you're doing it for, because we're all desperate to share our stories. We all want to help. I hear from lots of people a lot of time kind of saying, I'm feeling really inspired now. I really want to share my story, and it's important that we think about the impact that's going to have on us. We hope it's only going to be very positive, but even the process of reliving your story to write it down can be very difficult,
Absolutely.
So you have to really, there's that saying, isn't there, like kind of don't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, and I think that's so important. You've got to want to do it because, you've got to be healthy enough to do it and to, kind of know it's out there, because once it's out there, it's out there. If you suddenly decide in a couple of months' time, actually, I didn't want it out there. A lot of people decide to be anonymous. I remember when I first attached my name to stuff, Ashley Forward, who's the CEO of OCD UK, kind of contacted me and he was like, have you really thought this through? He's like, I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying that, have you thought about all the, kind of things that could happen as a result, and just like, the fact that people will know your name, they'll know your identity and stuff like that. And I was just like, yeah, I was ready for that. But I really appreciated that from him because had I rushed into that, that would have caught me. And so, yeah, there's loads of options of spreading awareness that is without you actually telling your story. But if you want to, just go for it and you just start off small. And I think in terms of the press, I have been very lucky with the journalists that I've dealt with, but it's not just luck because I'm quite the madam when they get in touch, and it's only because I've had to learn to be, because I've seen other people's stories be disrespected by them, So now if I get contacted by the press, the first thing I do is contact one of the charities. It's either Ashley at OCD UK or it's Olivia Bamber at OCD Action. She's been brilliant over the past few weeks supporting me, and so's Ashley. And so I need to see what they've done previously. I need to check to see. That's always a good idea. You kind of get the idea if they're just up to sensationalise your story. Is it all going to be focused on these slightly quirky and entertaining compulsions, or are they actually really looking at the fact that it's, that it's the obsessions that drive the behaviour? I have a list. I have a press list. So I'm like, right, okay, like you can have my story, but could you cover this and that and that and that and that? I ask for copy edit. That's always a really good idea. So they can't, I get that in writing as well. So they can't bring out my story unless I have checked it. I've sent it to the charities to check it.
Nice.
So, I have currently turned down quite a few big profile press things now. So like one of them being like BBC Women's Hour. And that is because there's just been elements of it that I've not felt 100% comfortable with, because as desperate as I am to get my story out there, I'm more desperate for them not to mess it up.
Is that Women's Hour? Is that TV?
BBC4.
Yeah, that's the thing. TV, because they have less time, often look to sensationalise things.
Yeah. I turned down Good Morning TV or whatever that was about a year ago. I didn't even bother looking at anything they did. I was like, no thanks. Again, it might be good for some people, but it's not good for me. And I always need to know as well that they're not just suddenly interrupt me and shut me off air. I've just and I had these harm urges towards my sons. Like, thank you, Catherine, and we're going to cut to the news. I don't want that.
Yeah.
So I have to have all these kind of things in place, which I was being like, am I being a bit of a control freak? Because this compulsion thing. And I was like, no, actually, I think this is very healthy behaviour. I am sharing something that is not easy to talk about, and I'm very happy to do it. But they need to look after my story, and they need to look after me. And that's exactly what I'd say to anyone else who wanted to share their story as well. So yeah, just But I've written a blog about it. I've updated one that I wrote before, which I'm going to share with the charities as well. So check that out as well, because I'm sure I'm forgetting some bits. But it's basically,
So as I say, send me a link to that and I'll add it to the show notes to this episode so people can go
oh,
there and click
that
on the
would be
link.
brilliant. Yeah, it's just, I'm not sure I'm remembering absolutely everything I do. But do you know what? And this is the thing. Once you've done it once, it's there. I know that when I talk to a journalist on the phone, I will forget half the questions unless they're in there. So I've got this little pack for if one rings me, and it's got my questions there, and it's got my little limitations. I'm not prepared to talk about this. I'm not prepared to talk about that. And
Nice.
that makes me sound like a diva, but I have to have that in place. And the women's health article, all those other kind of things, they all came out exactly how I wanted them because we were working so hard behind the scenes on them. That's me, that's the charities supporting me. So I think it's just, we have a duty to make sure that our stories are told responsibly. And so if we do decide to share them as well, not just for us, but for the community as a whole, we just need to make sure that whoever's going to share them, if it's the press, is sensible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very sensible and good approach to take with sharing it. Really, really thinking out, what's the outcome here? Am I okay with this being up in 10 years?
Yeah.
All of that stuff. What am I okay sharing? What am I okay not sharing? And what do I want to achieve with it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, where's it going to go out to? And when you're just doing it into the OCD community, it's safer.
Yeah.
Or when you go a little bit, take a further step out and it's into the general mental health community, it's still safe. It's a little bit more risk of, by risk, I just mean like, maybe a little bit of misunderstanding or whatever. But when you actually start going out into these places where the majority of people reading it won't have OCD, it's very important that it's represented well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good advice. Okay, so recently on your Instagram, I've noticed that you've been posting a lot about, and Ashley from OCD UK has as well, about how these companies have pulled products that miscommunicate the diagnosis of OCD on their products, usually around obsessive Christmas disorder, usually around being overly neat and anal about things. So a couple to mention, and these may just be UK references. Not on the high street is an online retailer, and here in the UK it could be global. I don't know. I know in America and I think Ireland it's TJ Maxx, I believe, but here
yes, it is.
Here it's TK Maxx. And they've removed all their OCD related products, which is huge. So how did you influence in that? How did you influence that? Let me leave it at that.
It's such a difficult one. So, like, I've always, when I first started doing advocacy, or when I first started, I used to get into these like odd rows with people because although I had terrible anxiety, I'm not afraid of confrontation, and I used to have these people, I used to kind of get involved in these conversations to do with misconception and misunderstanding. And then it didn't take very long for me to realise that actually it was a complete waste of my time, because the people I was kind of having these one-on-one conversations with had already made up their mind. They decided everyone else was a snowflake. And, I was much better placed spreading awareness positively, rather than questioning the misuse of the term and stuff like that, which is what I did very happily for a couple of years. After I had something like 1,500 messages come through from individual people after those two articles came out. I mean, it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. Like the stuff that came through, and they were amazing. And I've only just come to the point where I kind of feel comfortable that I've answered them all properly, because the round robin just wasn't going to cut the stuff people were saying to me. I really had to answer properly. And there were so many amazingly positive things that came out. So many people were like, oh my goodness, I'm going to go to my doctor's now because I've got this and blah, blah, blah. One of the things that kept coming out that I couldn't ignore was how badly the misunderstanding of what the condition is and the misconceptions evolving and the trivialization around it, how badly that was affecting the people who'd written to me in many situations. So you had people kind of saying, I have had terrible intrusive thoughts for years, and, really went into detail with me about it. And they were like, at no point did I ever consider that might be OCD. Didn't even Google it, because I thought OCD was about this, and this. Surely if it was that bad, this stuff wouldn't be out there kind of just, kind of trivializing it and stuff. And the first couple of messages, I was like, well, that's not good. And then they started coming through and coming through and coming through. And I was like, do you know what? This is a problem. This is a problem. It's creating an environment and, a kind of world that thinks it's one thing, and it's not, and it's dangerous. Actually, it's really dangerous. And I didn't want to go down the road of calling people out. Sometimes it feels quite negative, and it's not always the most positive conversation to have, but sometimes you have to kind of talk about the stuff that's not so nice in order to make positive change. And so, I was toying with this for ages, and then I was kind of thinking maybe I should talk to, Ashley about it. Maybe I should talk to OCD Action. And I just really, I was aware that I had a lot of eyes on me at the time. And I just thought, do I want to make this sudden, kind of campaign to try and get these things gone? Because I had information that other people didn't. Other people hadn't been sent these emails. And I was like, I don't have the right to just sit on this information. So I saw that the TK Maxx thing had been called into question on Twitter. And I thought, you know what, that's pretty big. And they took it down pretty sharpish. And that was just absolutely incredible. They brought out a whole range of obsessive Christmas disorder stuff. And it was like, the O in it was Rudolph's nose. And they'd sporadically, and this is what I loved about it, it had, loved in inverted commas, like kind of really meaning it really wound me up. But they had sporadically, it was written in red text, and they'd randomly put the odd green letter in it, because that's what it's all about for absolutely everyone who suffers from the condition. And it was a whole range. And someone had tweeted about it. That's another example about being careful with the press, because actually the press, without permission, then printed that, the red top papers, so the Daily Mail, the Sun, the Mirror. And you can imagine the kind of attention that brought.
Yep.
We learned a lot of lessons after that, actually, because Ashley was kind of working on that. I, when doing my Christmas shopping, came across Not on the High Street. So I'd just finished reading these letters about how negatively impacting these were for people in their lives. This just general idea. It's a bit of a laugh, bit quirky. And then I went to do my Christmas shopping on Not on the High Street and came across this purse that had some kind of meme on it about OCD. And I was like, no, I've had enough now. I've had enough. And so I emailed Not on the High Street, and you tend to get these like, we're doing keeping with our guidelines and we have policies. And it was like, stop hiding behind them, please. This is awful. You got to stop. And what's actually making a difference now is that I attached the BBC article to it. So if you don't do it for the OCD community, you need to do it, because actually word on OCD is spreading, and you look really daft by carrying this on, And the thing is, it's got power behind it. It's got power behind it. Look, the national press have kind of published this article on it. This is me. You're talking to me right now, And so it sounds a little bit ridiculous and a bit showy-offy, but it actually adds weight to the argument. And, I understand that not everyone's offended by these things. I know even people who actually really do have OCD aren't offended by these things. But having received those messages in the quantity that I did, and that content being in so many of them, I cannot sit on that information and just laugh off those products anymore. It's not a possibility for me. I can't do it. So Not on the High Street pulled the stuff, which was absolutely amazing. It just so happens, you kind of get the obsessive Christmas disorder stuff at this time of year. So as we were starting to get results, more and more people were getting involved. And so I've been working on Etsy for a little while, my lovely friends Etsy, and actually both OCD charities have come on board with that now. There are psychiatrists, there are psychotherapists, there are people actually writing to them about the impact that they're seeing in their, in their therapists, like in their kind of office, in their rooms.
Yeah.
They're actually starting to, so we're getting this very rounded view of actually the impact that these things are making, because it's brilliant if it doesn't affect you, it's brilliant if it doesn't offend you, but actually it does damage people in our community. It's more important that doesn't happen than someone having an OCD t-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's important. Like for me personally, I'm not offended by it. However, I know that the reason it took so long for me to figure out what was going on was because of, poor communication of what OCD was on TV shows. I doubt there was those types of products when I was a kid, but even now, people don't know what's going on because they see these stuff in these stores and they think that's what OCD is. Therefore, they think that's not what I have. And then as with the studies show, it's whatever. Different studies show different things. But one says like 12 years to get treatment, and to figure out what's going on, which is ridiculous. And that's what bothers me about it.
That's exactly the same as me. And I kind of think, how important is it to you to have obsessive Christmas disorder written on this cake tin? Can't you just say, I love Christmas? Does it have to be something that's even, it's something that is not difficult to talk about. Is not easy to talk about always. And it does, we've had Twitter trolls. Yeah. Do you know what? I actually don't mind a troll. I do. Sometimes I'm a bit like it's a troll, and I feel myself kind of leave them alone. It's like a scab you want to pick, but it brings out the worst in people who don't understand what you're doing. But that doesn't mean that you don't do it. That doesn't mean that you don't fight for what you very much believe is right. And all those people moaning about it, I say all those people, it's like 3 Daily Mail readers, but those people who are moaning about it don't understand the impact. You get people who say they've got OCD and they're not bothered. And you're like, well, what OCD do you have? And they're like, I have to clear my car every Saturday. I love polishing it. And you're just like, so you don't actually, so in terms of blood pressure, it's not always the easiest thing. Yeah. But we did learn last week our lesson. So when we got ignored, we called some people out on Twitter and it did not go down well. We're just like, it's like snowflake brigade, blah, blah, blah. So we have learned, and we are now working quietly away from social media to contact charities, to companies who are doing it. And when they withdraw the stuff, that is when we go to social media and we say, oh, look at this. This has gone, well done, amazing, And actually, I can say this, it's not launching until tomorrow, but OCD UK, we've been talking a lot the past week about how to do it in a way that doesn't bring negative attention to our lovely little community, but then still do what we ultimately need it to do, and that is to kind of reduce the amount of products, because the misconception is adding years to people's diagnosis. There's a whole list that I created from the letters of how negatively this stuff impacts our community. And so OCD UK have written a pledge, and they are going to write out to the 100 top retailers in the country, and then they like bricks and mortar shops, and then they're going to turn it to the online stores, actually asking people to sign a pledge to say that they will not be including OCD products, so that it becomes a very positive process. They will be promoted and mentioned on the website. And really, it doesn't take very long at all. Once you've written one letter, it's done. You just send it to different people, so that way everyone can focus on the positive of helping people who do have OCD, but then we can still throw into question what's not right about what's happening to it. So that's a bit of a heavy conversation, and it's not always the most positive, but I think it's so important. I couldn't ignore it after those messages, Stu. I really couldn't.
No, well, good for you for taking action, and I think it's inspiring because you've really shown change. And before, I think when, we see these various things come out, and it happens in each country, we usually attack the retailer, and that's rarely going to get them to change. And what you did was you used reason effectively and said, this is why it needs to change. Here's an article on an extremely credible website. Here's some reasons why it's affecting people and why it's damaging. And usually most retailers will change because they're not in business to hurt people. And even if they are, they're always about the money. So you just appeal to that and they will change.
Word spreading about OCD, if you're not doing it for ethical reasons, which you should be, by the way, but if you're not, then do it because actually it's really
good business.
Kind of bunch of numpties for putting this out. People know what OCD is now. More and more people know what it is, and you look cruel for keeping that up there. And we know you've asked to take it down, you've just not done it. So it's kind of there's a movement happening, and I feel really excited, Stu. There's some real change happening. And it's really nice. It was nice to see the two charities there was an article out today, and I think it was the first time ever both charities were mentioned in it, having given statements and stuff, so people are really joining this movement, and it's nice, and if it stops tomorrow, it stops tomorrow. But at the moment, it's really good to let people know, I think, that actually we are going to fight for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said there about the pledge, I think is brilliant.
Because that's all actually.
Yeah, well, weird coincidence, but I was at this conference type event today, and this lady who she's British, so she lived in Australia, and now she lives in Palau, which is a tiny, tiny island. It's north of Australia, but that sort of area. Anyway, so it's like 50 small islands, population of about 20,000 people. And she moved there with her husband, and she noticed that a lot of the tourists, she didn't name who they were, but apparently they came from a 4-hour flight. So about 160,000 started coming. Bear in mind the population's 20, and they'd never seen the sea. They didn't understand or appreciate conservation, so they were like finning sharks. They were picking up coral reef, which has been there for a long time, and like taking selfies with it. So basically destroying the area.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to deal with it. And what she did was she created a pledge. She got loads of these big ad people involved and stuff, and they create this pledge, and now like it's stamped in the passport, and when you land you have to read it, you have to sign this pledge that you will not destroy, and it educates them. And what they've found is within a year, like these incidents of like abuse to the sea have just plummeted. So it was
incredible. And what a positive way to do it. So it's not reactive and negative. It's like seeking a positive solution before, the bad thing happens.
Absolutely. Because these people, wherever they're from, as she said, had never really seen the sea. They had no understanding of the importance of it and how you should treat it well. So I thought that was just a weird coincidence. So hopefully the same sort of thing happens with this, and these retailers really take it on board and take it seriously.
Oh, I'm sure they will. There are more and more people kind of joining all the time. It sounds like a movement, doesn't it? Social movement, but it's more and more people are kind of joining to add their voices all the time. And it's just nice. I mean, even if nothing comes of certain things like Etsy are proving difficult, but I just think at least we've taught them that actually the next time someone comes with an OCD product, they're going to think twice. Yeah. And for me at the moment, that's almost enough, because, it's kind of put that little, seed of doubt in their brain as to whether that's appropriate or not and stuff. And, and all this kind of stuff, for me, again, has been brilliant, because, we talked a lot about like growing as a person and, kind of the exposures and stuff like that. You just taking part in things like this, a brilliant way of kind of working on characteristics that you'd like to have, and kind of like, I could never have imagined myself calling out these people or talking to the charities and stuff. I do quite a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm like, who do I think I am doing all of this stuff, but it's just like, it's amazing when you actually start taking part in advocacy, how much it boosts you and how much you get to define those skills. That you've got, and I sometimes cringe when I hear myself say the words like growth mindset and things like that. But actually, even something like dealing with naysayers online can bring a lot of positivity to your life. I'm learning how to be less reactive, possibly less aggressive if people are upsetting me. I'm learning how to walk away from situations, or, and they're all really positive things that without this advocacy work, I wouldn't necessarily have learned,
Absolutely, that's a great takeaway. All this is experience, and it's making you better and strengthening you. Absolutely. One thing, I did a quick online search in Ireland. TK Maxx is TK Maxx, not TJ Maxx, as I said. Correction. I feel they deserve credibility after this, so I didn't want to do them a disservice.
No, and they were absolutely brilliant. And I went into my local one in Walthamstow, just doing a bit of Christmas shopping again, and I spotted a couple of lids that they'd obviously missed. So like everything had been taken out apart from these 2 lids. And I went up to the manager and I was like, look, I'm sure this is just an oversight, but these have actually been taken down. And he was horrified. He was like, I'm really sorry. You're absolutely right. They should never have been brought out. And so, you tend to think of yourself, oh, they've been made to do it. They didn't really want to, really negative about it. And then actually it was like, you can imagine having these staff meetings of like, it's all got to go. We've learned some stuff. We didn't realise it, and it's actually all got to go. And they were really respectful. So full credit to that branch too for just being amazing.
Yeah, good on them. And TK Maxx's, I love them, but they can be a bit messy, so they probably just missed it.
Absolutely. Or it might have been one of the previous people. Some people were dealing with it by hiding them. Oh, wow. It's like, not that I recommend that for a second, but there were a couple of people who were like, kind of, I've just shoved them underneath the shelf. So maybe it just been that I found it. Like, really. Yeah, absolutely don't recommend that. It's better to go proper roots, but maybe they're just surfaced because they've been previously hidden by someone else trying to remove them.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, so yeah, I mean, hopefully that's inspired some people in whatever country you're listening to this. To next time you see a retailer selling something like that, to send them an email, get all your friends to send them an email, appeal to their common sense, their financial greed or sensibility, and see what happens.
And polite is definitely the best way forward.
Okay, so what's next for you?
I've got a list. I knew you were going to ask me this question. No, right. Okay, what's next for me? I have got some immediate things I need to do. So I need to finish that press blog. I need to update my contact section on the blog. And I've done a 3-part series based on this media stuff. So I did one on the BJM, I did one on the BBC article, and I've done a third one. I'm just waiting to wait for the OCD pledge to come out. I'm going to add that to it as well, talking about what I've learned from the letters that I received. I mean, obviously, I'm going to completely protect everyone's identity. I won't give anything away that will make anyone even remotely, identifiable. But I think I learned some really important things, and it's really important that I don't sit on that. I want it to get out there and to help people and stuff. So I'm going to share some of those things in a blog. I'm thinking about maybe approaching some of the more general mental health charities. Mind, Heads Together. There's been a couple of kind of incidents recently. Yeah, I just kind of think that, sometimes it feels like the OCD community is just kind of not as well represented as it could be in the bigger charities. They do an amazing job, but I just love to maybe see if there's something that I could do working alongside them. And I'm also going to contact the people who write the, all the maternity books and stuff, and ask if I can stick something in to their next editions about intrusive thoughts and OCD, because it's just not there. And I thought, what's brilliant, the midwives, yes, knowing about it, but let's empower the mothers, because all those types of books have sections at the back about your health, mental health, and my one kind of covered absolutely everything apart from OCD. So things like that need to change. So yeah, they're my kind of things. But I'm going to have a little rest for a while. It's been a really full on, and I'm so grateful to have gone through it. But I'm going to give myself, I think, about a month off. That's the plan anyway.
Well, yeah, you deserve it. And I mean, hopefully one day we'll see a Katherine Benfield book.
The only way that's going to happen, because people keep saying that to me, is if I just print out my blog and stick a hardcover on it. I cannot stand the thought of sitting there and writing it all again. Or I'll just do an audio book where I just talk for 20 hours and that can be it.
True. Cool. All right. So, I mean, you talked about this a lot on your last podcast, but I thought, throw it in, obviously, because your area is OCD generally, however, but it's also sort of maternal OCD. So just advice for parents who have OCD right now and are kind of going through some of what you went through, just any sort of words of hope or wisdom.
Absolutely. It gets so much better. It gets so much better than the place where you are now, and there are just amazing resources out there. You just need to know where to look. And if they're listening to this, then they've got
you've already found one.
Exactly, you've already found one. And what a resource to have, my goodness. And so it's just about just be really, really kind to yourself. And I mean, if that involves making sure that you get plenty of rest, do it. Having a young child or having a pregnant partner or being pregnant yourself, that's all exhausting. You really, really need to look after yourselves and make your health an absolute priority. Those other things will wait. They will absolutely wait. You need to eat well. You just need to make sure that you're resting and not too stressed. Really, really focus on you. And I mean, properly do it. Don't just say you're going to try and then stay ultra busy anyway. We've got a real society for that, and it needs to kind of stop. I should mention as well, which I did talk about last time, but I went out for my little Christmas dinner with maternal OCD last night. Yeah, cool. And they were talking about, it was really lovely. It was actually really lovely to see the ladies. But one of the things that we were talking about was like disclosing the nature of thoughts to medical staff and stuff like that. And I do hear from a lot of people who are like, I'm really worried about going to my doctor and saying X, Y, and Z and stuff like that. And I just want people to know that if they're in that position, there is absolutely no pressure on them to be absolutely specific about the thoughts, the nature of the thoughts or the urges or whatever that they're having. You know, you don't have to walk into your doctors. You know, by the time I went into my doctor, I was in such a state, I just blurted it all out. I was like, I think I'm going to harm my son. But you don't actually have to say any of that. You can go up to a GP or a midwife or a health visitor and say, do you know what? I'm having some very upsetting thoughts. They're really affecting me. I would like to be put through to, you know, CBT, or I would like to go and see a psychiatrist, or I would like to self-refer through to further therapy. And you don't actually have to say what it is that you're worried about. And one of the things that I didn't realise as well, and I mean, this obviously comes down to where you live, sadly, and what kind of options you've got for you. But, you know, the person who's treating you has a very important job to do. You know, and you need to they need to be the right ones for you as well. So even if you do get to, you know, when you do get that to that next stage, you can actually say, you know, what is it you know of OCD? What do you understand about OCD? You know, do you know about intrusive thoughts? And so you can actually make sure that before you kind of say anything, if you're worried about it, that the person you're talking to is really understanding, and that, you know, they're gonna get it. And also, you know, never ever underestimate the power of the charities. The charities do so much. I didn't realise they've got cards that you can take in to your GP. So if you can't find the word yourself, you know, you just hand them this card. They will advocate for you during these meetings that you've got and stuff like that. So, like, nothing has to be a knee-jerk quick reaction. You know, there is support out there, and there is a ton of it, an absolute ton. I'd say be careful of forums, chat rooms, very often without people realising. There's a lot of reassurance seeking on them, and that can, you know, twist you up in knots when you've already gone through it yourself. But yeah, just read and learn everything you can about it, and absolutely know that you're not alone. You know, I'm in a position where I've now heard from thousands of other people who are going through exactly the same thing, every single one of them feeling alone, you know, until they read that article. So, you know, you're not alone. Find support groups. You know, there are amazing people out there. Either one of the charities, anyone, just get in contact. Make sure you've got that support and people who can help you.
Yeah, great words. Okay, so you pick up pick up the phone and call your 20-year-old self. What would you tell her?
What would I tell her? Oh my God, there's so much I would tell her. This is going to sound probably, I would probably tell myself, you know, you're all right. You're all right. You know, I used to doubt everything that I did. You know, my self-esteem was at rock bottom. I was in a terrible state. And I would like to encourage myself to actually really love me and realise that I had this inside me that could kind of go on to do things that I never thought that I could. You know, kind of, I would just let myself know that actually I'm this person that's capable of so many things, and that I just needed to believe in myself. And I think within that would come absolutely everything else. You know, that would be my umbrella, because to give myself that confidence, I think would have seen me bloom, you know, quite a while before I actually finally did. I mean, I'm really glad I did, but I think if I'd have known that, it'd have probably come quite a bit earlier.
Okay, so next question. You've got a billboard in London. What do you want written on that billboard? I'm
not going to change what I said before. It is absolutely 100% don't believe everything you think.
Oh, yeah.
When I learnt the fact that actually my thoughts didn't really mean anything and that they were just quite random a lot of the time, the freedom that came with that was absolutely unbelievable, and I'm not going to change it. That is 100% what I want my billboard to say.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this should be just one lesson that's taught one time to primary school kids. You know, just get it in early, teach them that you know, their thoughts, they're only real if they decide them to be.
Yes.
And basic principles around that could make a hell of a difference to people's mental health. And that's just a theory of mine.
Yes.
But, what's a 30-minute lesson going to do? It's not really going to take up too much of the teacher's time.
Yeah, no, I know. And you know what? There are teachers fighting for that. There are like mindfulness movements going in school. I know people doing yoga and stuff like that. It's the pressure of kind of exams and there being less timetables and stuff like that. It's such a shame. But I mean, even talking to William, he's 6 now, and kind of talking to him about the concept that actually just because you feel sad right now doesn't actually mean there's a whole lot for you to be feeling sad about. There might be something. You don't want to invalidate the feelings, but it doesn't mean that you need to spend ages analysing it, because sometimes feelings just happen. And thoughts happen, just because you think it doesn't mean that actually happened. It doesn't mean that that's actually the way it was. And you can see it and it kind of sinks in. And I just think, you lucky little thing learning this at 6. How amazing.
Very true. Okay, so is there anything else that I haven't asked you today that you wish you could have shared?
Do you know what? I think I've absolutely covered it. I think I've covered it. I just want to let people know. I mean, like, I'm aware that I probably come across, I just want people to know that, to have like lots of hope. I'm not explaining myself particularly well, but before I became an advocate and before people got to know me through this, I was a very, very different person. The ability to talk to you on here, the ability to write anything down. I didn't even know I could write anything. I didn't believe in my ability to write. And then I started a blog, and it was all just about those little flickers of belief and taking a chance. And I know it sounds very cringy. It's not meant to be, but it's that idea that actually I was at rock bottom for as many things as you could possibly be. Self-esteem. I was being eaten alive by OCD. And actually, bit by bit, the things that I did pushed me to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And when I look back at who that woman was, I don't recognise her. I don't recognise her at all. And I just want, people to know that if that is the position where they're in now, where they're feeling like, they're in chains, that it's never going to get better, that's not true. And that there is a future you waiting there, that you will one day look back at who you are now and not recognise. So I just really want to reiterate that I'm not this person who's always been massively confident dealing with the press and all this kind of stuff. That's not who I was. I've learned it to share my story, so you can completely transform yourself, and that in a really good way. And I just want people to know that, because I know it beats the life out of you when you're really poorly.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. When you're in it, it doesn't feel like that's ever going to be possible. So it's good that you're saying it, because it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Cool. Great way to end. As always, thank you for your time and also for your great work you've been doing recently.
Oh, thank you, Stuart. And thank you so much for having me. I always really love talking to you.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Catherine and found it useful. If you want to find out more about her, you can head over to theocdstories.com/podcast and you'll see all the links to her stuff in the show notes there. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It's not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. Until we speak, take care.